Hola y bienvenidos. Welcome to Mole Mama Cooking with Love. We drive connection, unity, acceptance, and love across all cultures and generations. Want to be very clear that all are welcome, and we are delighted and grateful to have you listening. You're about to join us for our weekly adventure where we chat with entrepreneurs, chefs, foodies, artists, and nutritionists who are helping us to connect and learn. We'd love for you to visit our YouTube channel where you can learn to make delicious guacamole, chimichangas, mojicates de queso y chorizo fundido, crunchy tacos, enchiladas, flour tortillas, and so much more. Private message us if you need any help. We'd love to help you make those recipes successful. And please subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review. We'd love to hear from you. You are greater than you know, from Mother Teresa. And I chose that quote because of whose guest is today. I'm so excited to be talking to him. In just a moment, we're going to be speaking with Esteban Castillo from Chicano Eats. But let me tell you a little bit about this remarkable young man. Esteban is a Chicano Mexican-American who lives in Southern California with his gorgeous life partner, Billy, and 2 dogs. He's a communications specialist and a graphic designer by day and a home cook and reality TV connoisseur by night. He is also the author of the food blog, Chicano Eats, where he gives Mexican food a minimalist and colorful treatment and explores his bicultural identity as a Chicano through stories and food. And if you haven't yet, while you're listening, if you can, run over to his Instagram feed because you are going to be so excited and you're going to want to eat Mexican food, just warning you now. So it's going to happen. So with that, welcome to the show, Esteban. So nice to have you here with us today.
Thank you for having me on.
I'm just so excited. Your feed is amazing. All your food. So before we get talking about the food, because I'll just stay there. So can you tell our listeners a little bit more about Chicano Eats?
Yeah, Chicano Eats is a platform that I started. I think it's be going on 3 years in next month. It's something that I had already started when I was in college. When I was in college, I was studying marketing and graphic design, and I was part of a bilingual newspaper that one of my friends had just started. And so she brought me on to do graphic design and the layout. And because it was such a new publication, she was in need of content. So I pitched a food column, and that's where I sort of started talking about food and writing about food. And after I graduated, I kind of left that behind because I started working in the field right away. And it was because of my job and just feeling very, very constricted and feeling almost not very creative, that my partner sort of told me to pick up the camera again and start doing what I was already doing in college. And so that's how Chicano Eats basically came to fruition, um, just from being bored with my job.
That's fantastic. Okay, but you take these remarkable photos, but how did you learn to cook? Who taught you?
Honestly, it was all through trial and error because I went to school in Humboldt State up in Northern California, and it's a very isolated area. The nearest city was San Francisco, which was maybe 5.5 hours south. Um,
Okay, I'm sorry, but I went there. I went to school there a long time ago, maybe even before you were born. But I went to school there
where
too.
to Humboldt? Oh
I
my
did,
god!
and I studied marketing.
Yeah,
So
so you know how far away it is from civilization, basically.
yes.
So there weren't a ton of Mexican restaurants there, and there would be times where I would be craving a specific dish that I just couldn't find anywhere in the area. So I'd give my mom a call, and I'd ask her for the recipes, and she wouldn't know how to basically recite them to me. The way that she cooks is completely different than from how I cook and my generation cooks. So it was almost a struggle trying to replicate all of the things that I loved. And when I would give her a call, she'd be like, "Oh yeah, here's a list of ingredients. You just add a little bit of this, a little bit of that," and that didn't help me a lot. So it was just through trial and error, and really trying to um, uh, get a taste of home that sort of sparked uh, me getting into the kitchen.
I love that. That is so beautiful. A taste of home. Okay, so how does your generation cook?
I
I want to hear this.
well, I was I was actually looking at this over the holidays because me and my mom were both in the kitchen, and she cooks from the heart. She cooks with a lot of soul, and it's almost like her hands just go into autopilot. And for me, it's completely different. I need to know exact measurements. I need to know why a certain ingredient is going into the dish. Like I have to sort of piece everything apart and put it back together and sort of learn the mechanics. And my mom just goes and she does her own thing. She doesn't second guess herself.
Yeah, I cook like your mama, so we cook the same way. And I think it's practice, just
Yeah.
doing it for so long,
Oh yeah.
right? But that's so great that you understood that you needed something different. So did you use YouTube or, I mean,
I I didn't. Honestly, it was just getting into the kitchen and then just trying to remember how it was that my mom would do things.
that's outstanding because your food is gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous.
Thank you.
All right.
It definitely took some time to get there.
They are beautiful photos. And how did you come up with this name? Because it's so clever.
Chicano Eats just came. It was something that came naturally. I mean, growing up, I grew up to two undocumented parents. So for me, when I was growing up, I was basically the only one that got to go travel to Mexico. Um, and whenever I would go back and forth, I always felt like I never really fit in either in the US or in Mexico because you'd be in one country and you would be at the time I would feel like I wasn't either Mexican enough or American enough, and I think it's a feeling that a lot of Chicanos or Mexican Americans tend to feel, just because we sort of have to assimilate and be part of two different cultures at the same time. So when I was coming up with the name for the blog, I knew it had to be something that I could relate to, and for me, it was being a Chicano. Um, and Chicano Eats is basically just I don't know. It's just it encompasses everything that I do in terms of like the different fusions as well as presenting the traditional Mexican recipes. It's everything all in one. If that makes any sense.
It does, and I have experienced much of what you've said, much of the same because my parents um, were first generation, but still, when I would go to Mexico, I didn't really fit in there. So I know exactly what you mean, exactly. And so I think it's such a the name. There's so much in your name. It's very full. It's two words, but it just says speaks volumes to I think some of the things that go on within our culture that maybe you might only understand if you're part of our culture. So I
Hmm.
think it's great that you're talking about it. So, all right, now tell me how you started cooking and what was the first post that you put up on your blog?
Um, that's a good question because I remember when I launched the blog. I think it was a few weeks before the election. And I launched with a handful of recipes. Um, I think there was pozole rojo. Um, there was a dragon fruit mojito. There were a few different ones, but I launched with a handful because when I wanted to launch, I wanted to make sure that people could stick around for a while. So I'd have to go back, but I think there were at least five recipes that I launched the blog with.
That's really smart. That's what I did with my YouTube channel. I did the same thing. I did 5 recipes. So that's interesting. Maybe we read it at the same place. You should have more than one. So that's awesome. That's awesome. So now do you cook for your family now and your mom? And what does she think of your food?
I do most of the time. Whenever I go to visit, I end up well. Now, when I go and visit, I do maybe half of the cooking. but uh, before my parents moved to where they live now, they would always be the ones to visit me because I was sort of on the way to wherever they were going to. Um, and so I used to be the one that cooked a lot more often. But my parents love it. My mom loves it. She can just relax and have a glass of wine while I go crazy in the kitchen.
Oh, you can come visit me anytime and cook here. I would love it too. That's outstanding. That's wonderful.
Yeah, I was
And
gonna say, especially with the book and having to test all these recipes, it's just been they've been very happy and very full.
okay, so tell our listeners about your book. This is so exciting.
I'm writing a cookbook. I'm writing my first cookbook, self-titled Chicano Eats. Um, it's not something that I saw myself working on right now. Um, I was maybe 6 months into launching the blog when I had an editor from a big publisher that reached out to me and she said, "Hey, have you ever thought of writing a book? Are you working on a proposal right now?" And I sort of initially brushed it off because I was like, I just launched my blog. I don't think this is the perfect time for me. I just don't think this is the time for me to start writing a book. Um, and so she connected me with with a literary agent, and we started working together. And then the more we talked about it, the more I got comfortable with the idea. And so I've been working on this from the proposal to now working on the actual book. It's been maybe 2 years. Um, and I'm really happy to be working with um, a publisher who believes in my work, is letting me do whatever I want. And I'm also really excited to be working with one of the only Latinas in the publishing game, which is something that I was really looking forward to, is just having someone who understood my work and really just believed in everything that I was doing and am doing.
That is so outstanding. So you were so fortunate to have somebody actually come find you because I've written one book and I'm working on my second book now.
Mhm.
And it's really hard. It's really hard to find somebody to actually publish you. And it's just such a testament to what you're doing that somebody actually came and found you, Esteban. That's so, congratulations.
Thank you.
Just,
It
it's fabulous.
it
Now, when does,
is a lot
tell our
of work.
listeners when your book comes out? Can we pre-order it now?
It's still in production.
Okay.
I'm still working on edits, and retaking any photos that I'm not 100% happy with. Um, as of right now, it's slated to come out early summer, late spring. That's
Okay.
sort of the timeline that I have right now. But it's still in progress. I haven't shot the cover yet, which is something that I'm really looking forward to. Um, but yeah, it'll be coming out sometime next year.
Well, congratulations. And for our listeners, if you're going to post those dates on your Instagram, right? So if
Yeah,
they follow you, they'll know.
yeah.
Okay, how to.
As soon as I have those dates, I've turned everything in.
All right.
I'll be making the announcement.
That's so exciting. Yay. All right. So now tell me, what is your most popular recipe on your current blog?
One of the most popular recipes has got to be the Concha bread pudding. That is something that I published maybe 2 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago. It was around the winter, and I wasn't sure how the recipe was going to be received. Most of the time, I'm not really sure how my recipes are going to be received because there's two groups of people that I sometimes encounter. Is the people that want really traditional recipes that don't like it when you get creative, and then the people that are really accepting that love everything that I put out. And surprisingly, this has been one of the recipes that has been embraced by both groups.
So tell our listeners a little bit about that recipe because that is so creative. So first of all, explain what a concha is so that 'cause I know that I have several non-Latinos listening, which I love. And then please share what did you do with conchas? Because that's fantastic.
Well, if you're not familiar, Concha is one of our most favorite, beloved pan dulces. It's very soft, very moist, and it's topped with this um, with with like I'm blanking out. It's this.
It's sugar.
Yeah, it's got this like nice little crispy sugar crust that goes on top, and it's in the shape of a shell. Um, and a lot of people have redone bread puddings in with all sorts of different things. Just me personally, I've done one with rum and with croissants. So for me to use pan dulce was kind of a no brainer. Um, where I was living at the time, the only place I was able to get pan dulce was at a local market, and most of the time when I would reach for a concha, it was always kind of stale because it was from like the day before, or it just wasn't as fresh anymore. So it was just kind of a thing that happened naturally. Um, there's already spices built into the conchas, so it was the perfect pair.
Okay, I'm gonna go look for this recipe because I hadn't seen that one. So, because that sounds amazing. That really sounds delicious. Concha bread pudding. So, where do you come up with these ideas for these recipes?
It's a lot of brainstorming. Just talking about like the going back to the book, a lot of the recipes just stem from different things that I had growing up, whether it be candies, um, or just different flavors that I'm sort of now rediscovering that I didn't like as a kid. And it just comes from trying to figure out how I can implement Mexican flavors and spices and all of these things that go into the cuisine into traditional American dishes.
So, have you ever created a recipe that you're like, ooh, I don't like that.
Um, no, I don't think so.
Okay, because I sometimes experiment a lot too, and sometimes I've gone, ooh, that was not good. We'll not be doing that again.
I think I feel like in terms of that, sometimes it could be like a protein of choice or something like that where it might not have worked on the recipe, but I I stand behind my word.
That's good. That's really good because well, I mean, I don't share those things that I don't like, but I just experiment. Um, and I am half Mexican and half Portuguese, and so
Mhm.
sometimes I get very sassy with what I'll do, and I'm like, oh no, I shouldn't have done that. Um, okay, well, that's really cool that you haven't had that experience yet. All right, so I want to also find out from you. You know, you've been doing this for a few years. You started in college. Now you're writing a book. You have this very, very successful blog. What has been some of the biggest surprises about all this work you've been doing with your brand?
I think I think the bigger surprises that have come on more of the business side. Um, uh, with being a blogger and being a quote unquote influencer comes a lot of sponsorship opportunities and things like that. And so sometimes when brands approach you to do work with them, I feel like they don't think you're very smart, especially when it comes to like business and managing your contracts and stuff like that. So for me, I feel like it's been really hard trying to uh, get taken seriously by some of these brands.
Very interesting.
And I think for me, it's helped that I have the background in marketing and public relations because this is something that I've been doing for the past it's been 6 years now. So I've worked with influencers directly through my different jobs. So I'm able to negotiate my contracts. I know what I'm looking for. I feel like a lot of people who are in this business of creating content um, don't necessarily look into what kind of rights they're giving away when they're working with brands. Um, and so for me, I found that it's been super helpful to already have that background because I can negotiate a lot more easily and get what I want. Try to keep as much of the rights that I can, to still own my content. Um, but I feel like having brands take you seriously is probably been one of the bigger hurdles. Um, but yeah.
That's, no, it's really wonderful that you have that experience and you have that background because I'm sure it's extremely helpful as you're mentioning. So, has it been one of the bigger challenges then for you, or have there been others that have other challenges that you faced?
I think one of the other challenges has just been trying to get through people. I think it's been trying to get people to understand that Mexican cuisine is regional. The way that I cook and the way that my recipes are done, it might be completely different than from how someone else from a different state makes that same dish. Um,
Hmm.
there's been a few things that I've done with different outlets where I'll have really negative comments where they're like, well, that's not how enchiladas are done where I'm from, or why didn't you use flour tortillas instead of corn tortillas? And I think it's just been trying to get through the, I don't want to say lack of education, but just that,
Yeah, I mean,
you
the way I explain it,
understanding that,
yeah, and the way I explain it is because the same exact thing happens to me. They're regional, and it's whatever was available in that region. That's how these recipes originated.
yeah.
So, if it was flour tortillas that were used, then that's why it's flour tortillas. And I know in my own family, my mother made us homemade flour tortillas every single day of my life.
Mhm.
So it was fantastic. But therefore, a lot of my recipes have flour tortillas. And actually, when I'm using corn, it's because I've just decided to use corn. It wasn't the way my mom did it. So,
Yeah, it gets a little hard sometimes. Just having to deal with people not understanding just how rich the cuisine is and just how diverse everything in Mexico is.
mhm, I agree. So, what's been some of the fun that you've had with it?
Um, honestly, I think it's been getting to meet a lot of different creators. When I started the blog, I didn't realize I was going to end up making so many friends in such a close area. Um, and it's just been such a really rich and embracing community. Um, I think that's been one of my biggest takeaways from this. Also, just reaching people through the blog that I never thought I would have reached. I've received a lot of emails from different kids that are in college telling me, "Hey, I didn't really grow. I'm also Chicano. I didn't really grow up with the culture." And your blog has sort of allowed me to be part of something that I'm trying to discover on my own.
That's really beautiful. Very beautiful. That connection back to our culture. That's so lovely that you're doing that. So, when you're at home and you're like, I want to make one of my favorite dishes to eat for dinner, what is that?
um, it's one of two things. It's either tacos de papa or
I love tacos de papa. I love those.
and
And what's the other
that's
thing?
like my go-to.
Okay. And what's the other thing?
Sopes.
Oh, okay. These are two of my favorites too. Oh my goodness.
Where's your family
Okay.
from?
Pardon me?
Where's your family from? In Mexico.
My mom's family was from the state of Jalisco.
Oh, so then you might be we might share the same kind of sopes. I feel like it's kind of like a regional thing with us and the type of sopes that we have. My parents, both sides of the family are from Colima, which is neighboring to Jalisco, and
Mhm.
the way that we make sopes is completely different than the rest of Mexico. We have like the flat, short discs with a lot of broth.
Mhm.
Is that how you guys have them?
And then you fry it, and
Yeah,
you dip the broth, and then you fry them, and they splash all over the place.
yeah.
Yes, those are the ones we make. And then I love those with chorizo and papas.
Oh my gosh. Sorry.
Yes, absolutely love those. All right. So, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners, Esteban?
Um, if you aren't already getting in the kitchen, I would definitely suggest getting into the kitchen and just trying a few different recipes. I feel like you get to learn a lot about your culture and a lot about your family and your history by just getting in there and making a lot of these recipes that have been passed down. That's been like one of the things that I've taken away with my own family is just asking these questions and asking my mom for the recipes because sometimes she'll sit there and she'll tell me about a story that she has in connection to the recipe, and I've learned a lot um, about my family through that. And I've also learned a lot about myself and the things that I like and that I don't like. And like I was saying earlier, it's allowed me to rediscover a lot of things that I hated as a kid, which has been kind of amazing.
And what are some of those things? Because we didn't talk about that. What are some of those things that you hated as a kid?
Things like requesón. When I was a kid and I would go back to Mexico for the summer, um, and I was staying with mi abuelita. My grandpa would come in every morning, and he would have a jug of leche caliente, fresh milk from the cow, and he would also bring a little tub with nata, which is sort of like the stuff that sits at the top. And my grandma would spread it over a fresh bolillo, and I just remember how much it used to gross me out. And now the smell of it just like reminds me of her. She passed away a few years ago, and like I was saying, these things just make me feel closer to them, and it just like brings really great memories of them.
That is so beautiful, and this is what Mole Mama is so much about is family recipes.
Hmm.
And for me, I grew up on a dairy farm, so I know what nata is for sure, the warm milk. And and I would recommend, since you still have your mama, that you videotape her cooking.
Hmm. That
So
is
you have
one
that.
of my next projects.
Yeah. And so it's nice to have those videos and that connection. And one of the videos that I have on my YouTube channel is one of my tias making her flour tortillas. And
Hmm.
when I did that video with her, it was so fun. I found out that she started making them when she was 15 years old and like that her hands were trembling the first time she did it. And, they're just cute little stories of their experiences with food and with all of their ancestors as well. So like you
Hmm.
said, it's just a great way to connect with our families and with our culture.
Hmm.
All right. So, Stefan, it's been so fun to chat with you today. And for our listeners, make sure you follow Chicano Eats. Like I said, but just be prepared. You're going to be hungry. You're going to be looking for Mexican food. You're going to go into your kitchen and want to cook. So, and, continued success to you. And
So,
hopefully you'll come back and talk to us after your book is live. And you tell us all about that, your book signings and your release and all that kind of exciting stuff that's going to be happening for you.
thank you. I'm so excited. I'm so excited, honestly, to just be able to share this this project with everybody. I I don't know if people understand just how much work and love goes into creating a book and putting it together. That I'm really excited for people to be able to hold it in their hands.
Yes, and I know that the first time I held my book in my hands, I just cried like a small child. It really is like giving birth to a child. It really that's what I equate it to. So definitely. Yes, definitely. But thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for
All
coming
right.
on. It was so much fun.
It was really fun. All right, so our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in to Mole Mama Cooking with Love. Remember to add the most important ingredient to every recipe you make, your love. And as my mama always said to me as we said our goodbyes, que Dios te bendiga. May God bless you.